Boom! She bursts out of the ground, her giant spider legs flailing as people run away in all directions. To the untrained eye, it looks like Choo Choo Charles has once again burst out of the ground in Aranirum, but this isn't Choo Choo Charles. Her trained body is painted pink, her face has lovely eyelashes and lips painted red, with lipstick, not blood, and at the tip of each of her long spider legs she has a bright pink, perfectly manicured nail. This isn't Choo Choo Charles, it's Choo Choo Charlene. Like Choo Choo Charles, but a girl. And they aren't just here, they're all over the world. In China, Choo Choo Charlenes crawl all over the Great Wall. In Paris, some Choo Choo Charlenes are making webs across the Eiffel Tower. In London, Choo Choo Charlenes swarm over the Houses of Parliament and climb up Big Ben, just as they do over Mount Rushmore in the United States, Red Square in Russia, the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, and the Taj Mahal in India. Choo Choo Charlenes have not only somehow come to exist, they've seemingly taken over the planet. They're in people's homes, they're on TV, they're on billboards and in magazines. Train spiders aren't just confined to one little island anymore. They aren't a dark secret. They're a fluffy pink global phenomenon. But how could this have happened? A girl Choo Choo Charles terrorizing the island of Aranirum. And is this new Choo Choo Charlene nicer than Choo Choo Charles, or even worse? Watching the whole video is the only way you're gonna find out. It began with one of the most horrifying Choo Choo Charles rampages ever seen. Charles was waiting underneath the islands in the complex network of tunnels he calls home, chilling out and digesting his meal of several innocent islanders. For him, it was a perfect afternoon, until the islanders tried to blow him up with dynamite. That's right, the whole tunnel started rumbling around him, waking up the furious train spider. Up above, gangs of islanders desperate to destroy the killer train that had been making their lives a living hell for centuries were throwing clumps of powerful dynamite down in the tunnels around him and hammering the detonation plunger like there was no tomorrow. It would either kill Choo Choo Charles or fill him with more rage and hatred for humanity than usual, which, the most recent time we checked, was a whole lot. As the tunnels began to collapse all around him, Charles shook with pure anger. Steam tooted out of him as his body began to grow and shift. His body became wreathed in fire and glowing red veins. His muscles bulged, and the words "murder, kill time" appeared across the side of his train body. He hadn't just become Hell Charles, he'd become Super Hell Charles. And he was ready to show those poor islanders exactly what he could do. And what he could do, as you probably guessed, is massive violence. Super Hell Charles forced his way up through the dirt and rocks, effortlessly crawling through what would take professional mining machines weeks to penetrate. Charles didn't even care. He was going to annihilate everything in his path. Before the islanders making an attempt on Charles's life could move, Super Hell Charles was upon them. The ground exploded, filling the air with boulders and particles of dirt. People nearest to the explosion point went flying. Those who died first were the lucky ones. The rest were left face to angry face with the unprecedented horror of the face of Super Hell Charles. One of the miners, a man named Ricky, was the closest. He was carrying a huge pile of dynamite. He knew this close to the giant teeth of Choo Choo Charles, he was effectively doomed either way. Could he use his dying moments to destroy the terror of the island? He gulped and threw the dynamite directly into Choo Choo Charles's mouth, and boom! It exploded. But unlucky for him, Super Hell Charles wasn't affected in the slightest. The exploding dynamite had just become one more spicy meatball. Super Hell Charles opened his mouth and unleashed a jet of flame so powerful that poor Ricky was instantly vaporized into ash. But this was just the start of Super Hell Charles's rampage. He would not leave a single stone unturned or a single person unterrified in his quest to get vengeance for his peaceful Sunday being ruined by all those worthless humans. He devoured or incinerated all the members of the demolition team that had tried to destroy him in his home. But he wasn't done. He then turned his eyes, bright and burning with hatred, over to the nearby island town and started bounding toward them, eager to show them the new flame powers he developed as a result of his incredibly spicy meal. The townsfolk who saw Super Hell Charles quickly approaching either started running for their lives or grabbing weapons to fight back, or at least hold him off. Shotguns, rifles, machine guns, crossbows, they'd throw everything they had at the killer train to protect the lives of themselves and their families. But would it be enough to stop Super Hell Charles? No, obviously. The monstrous train spider rolled into town and tanked the volley of bullets, arrows, and other thrown objects that the islanders tried to unleash upon it. Super Hell Charles unleashed another huge jet of flame, burning many to death in an instant and causing many others to run in terror. Knowing it was hopeless to fight him directly like this, there was no way to win until the town's secret weapon was deployed. one that they'd been secretly working on for years, ready for a situation exactly like this. It was hidden inside a local abandoned church, the kind of place that Super Hell Charles would never even pay any mind to. But he certainly started paying attention when the church's roof mechanically opened and exposed a giant Gatling gun turret, one that dwarfed even the carriage-mounted machine gun they'd used against him before. Super Hell Charles felt a pang of nervousness as the giant gun turned towards him and unleashed hell, firing off thousands of bullets in a matter of seconds that pounded into the side of Super Hell Charles's trained body. Now he was on the run for a change. Super Hell Charles ran for it across the town, trying to dodge the hail of deadly bullets. His energy was draining fast, and he was starting to transform again. First, he transformed from Super Hell Charles back into Hell Charles, and from there he transformed back into a terrified version of normal Choo Choo Charles. Would the next transformation mean his death? Choo Choo Charles had no intention of sticking around to find out, but escaping would be easier said than done. The giant turret gun kept firing, and Choo Choo Charles was boxed in by the buildings around him. He seemed trapped, but when he saw an open road, he turned quickly and took it, hoping that it would lead him out of the town and toward some kind of tunnel that could aid in his escape back underground. There, he'd take the time to heal and recuperate himself before he planned his next revenge against those fool islanders. He'd find a way to destroy this gun turret and make them all fear him again. But he was so wrapped up in his thoughts of revenge that he didn't even see the new obstacle rolling out in front of him. It was a huge chemical truck transporting a giant vat full of chemicals marked Mega Estrogen. Choo Choo Charles couldn't read, so he didn't know exactly what he was going to crash into, but he did know that it was too late to stop himself from the collision course now. Things were about to get girly. Choo Choo Charles hit the truck's chemical vat with full force, smashing the container and showering himself in the glowing liquid. He skidded across the ground, rolling and smashing through buildings until he came to a stop. Choo Choo Charles was completely unconscious, the Mega Estrogen sinking into his skin. The people of the town started cheering in pure joy. With the help of their gun turret and a lucky truck of chemicals, they'd successfully put down Choo Choo Charles. Now it was time to destroy him for good. The townspeople worked together to grab every weapon they could: knives, hammers, axes, meat cleavers, machetes, and baseball bats. While Choo Choo Charles lay unconscious, they would destroy his wretched life. But this time, someone was standing in their way. Warren Charles III, the descendant of the town's founder, and all-around strange, sinister guy. He was curious about the effect these strange chemicals would have on Choo Choo Charles. It would be such a shame for a legendary train monster to die before they could find out the answers to all the big questions. Maybe Mega Estrogen would give Choo Choo Charles a whole new lease on life. Or, as many of the townspeople suspected, it might go on to make Choo Choo Charles a lot worse. The only way to find out would be to let it ride and just see what happened. The townspeople captured the unconscious Choo Choo Charles and took him back to the tunnels, effectively dumping him down a large hole and hoping to never see him again. But with Choo Choo Charles still processing the Mega Estrogen, left alone in the dark, he started to do the thing he was best at, other than killing and eating people: laying lots and lots of eggs. But unlike the normal rainbow of huge glowing Choo Choo Charles eggs, these eggs were only one color: a bright, girly pink. This change in the eggs raised one big question: what would hatch from all these eggs? And another person who was feeling curious about that exact same question was the most powerful town jerk himself. That's right, Warren Charles III. He'd been sending unfortunate townspeople down into the tunnels to keep an eye on the situation as it developed. They told him all about these new glowing pink eggs and about the fact that since being hit by the Mega Estrogen chemicals, Choo Choo Charles himself had been much more docile and chill. Perhaps they'd actually found a way to stop Choo Choo Charles without using violent methods for once. But Warren Charles III wasn't going to just stop there. Much like his ancestors who, through their mining greed, had unleashed Choo Choo Charles in the first place, Warren Charles III saw these eggs as a potential big pink dollar sign. Maybe he could find a way to monetize these eggs and rebuild his family's legendary fortune. And if in the process his quest for that profit caused the loss of a few human lives along the way, that was a sacrifice he was willing to make. Sleeping gas was pumped down into the tunnels to help subdue Choo Choo Charles, while a team of terrified islanders descended into the tunnel on loops of rope that their friends and neighbors were carefully lowering. They had clear instructions: grab as many of the pink eggs as they can and bring them back up. They weren't even told why, but Warren Charles III had such influence over the town, it didn't even matter what he wanted. He ruled here. By the time they'd accomplished this mission, they were able to bring just over 100 pink eggs to Warren Charles III's mansion. There, the shady businessman closely studied the eggs and placed them in a guarded incubator 24 hours a day. They would carefully wait and observe the eggs until they hatched, and see if whatever came out might hold some potential or need to immediately be destroyed. In the middle of the night, exactly 13 days after the eggs were first collected, they began to hatch, and even Warren Charles III had no idea what to expect. But it certainly wasn't what actually came crawling out of those bright pink shells. It was the birth of 100 little Choo Choo Charlene girls, oddly adorable little baby train monsters with pink train bodies, dainty eyelashes, and painted pink nails on the tips of their spider legs. Despite the fact that the people of the island had been terrorized for centuries by Choo Choo Charles, Warren Charles III and all the workers at his mansion found the new Choo Choo Charlene babies to be incredibly adorable. Not only did they not immediately grow into giant monsters like the babies of radioactive Choo Choo Charles, there was also another major difference between the Choo Choo Charlene babies and regular Choo Choo Charles babies. They were friendly. They cooed and babbled almost like human babies, and while the workers were at first nervous around them, when the little Choo Choo Charlenes cuddled up to them, enjoying their warmth, they soon found their hearts melting. It was one of the most adorable things they'd ever seen. Even the cold, greedy heart of Warren Charles III was at least partially thawed by this display of extreme cuteness. The mansion was crawling with adorable, curious Choo Choo Charlenes, each about the size of a small dog. Everything was new to them, so they excitedly took it all in. The mansion was a world of wonder and discovery. But then came the first worry. What would happen when the Choo Choo Charlenes got hungry? Would they become the same ravenous monsters as their father if their tummies got the rumblies that only human flesh could satisfy? However, that's when the next magical thing happened. When Choo Choo Charlenes got hungry, Warren Charles III had an idea. He brought out a large, luxurious cake covered in delicious sweet frosting and strawberries, and fed it to a small group of the girly little creatures. They were on it immediately, scoffing down mouthfuls of the yummy strawberry cake. They ate it with the same enthusiasm that their father, Choo Choo Charles, ate the inhabitants of the island. Warren Charles III was fascinated, and he wanted to perform further experiments. He ordered his workers to bring in as many crates of candy as possible. Warren pried off the lid of one of the crates. It was full of delicious, colorful hard candy of every shape and size. With a huge crowd of the little Choo Choo Charlenes waiting in front of him, he tossed handfuls of candy out to them. Just like with the cake, they hungrily ate up the candy, crunching them down with their razor-sharp teeth. It seemed that, unlike their murderous father, these Choo Choo Charlenes didn't want to eat human beings. They wanted to eat candy and cakes. An insidious idea was forming in Warren Charles III's head, one that he knew would make him millions, no, billions of dollars. He'd be richer than his grandfather had ever been from the mining game. That's because he had the perfect product, a new designer pet that nobody had ever seen before. He wanted to put a Choo Choo Charlene inside every home in the world, and if his plot worked, he'd be wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. His business assistants made deals with some marketing experts on the mainland, and within a month, the message was out. A new pet is hitting the market, half train, half spider, all loving and adorable, and all you need is to feed it candy. It's the wonderful, magical Choo Choo Charlene. For once in his life, Warren Charles III had been completely right. Choo Choo Charlene quickly became a worldwide sensation. At first, every celebrity in Hollywood wanted one as a fashion statement. Starlets and super hunks were all seen walking down catwalks and red carpets with Choo Choo Charlenes, either on a leash or in an oversized handbag. They were brought into interviews and talk shows where they had further exposure. And when a video of one of the Choo Choo Charlenes eating colorful cupcakes went viral on TikTok, the trend truly set off everywhere for everyone. Meanwhile, back on the island, Warren Charles III was expanding his operations. His goons were constantly pumping more girly chemicals back into the tunnels, both to keep Choo Choo Charles calm and friendly and to keep him laying more and more of those special pink eggs. Workers went down in shifts, carrying out more and more of the pink eggs, which would be packaged into ships and sailed abroad. Warren had completely lost interest in mining now. He was raking in the mega bucks from selling off Choo Choo Charlenes and Choo Choo Charlene eggs to interested buyers all across the globe. But the craziness was only just getting started. Every little girl in the world wanted their own Choo Choo Charlene. After years of having their brothers prank them and steal their toys, scribbling all over their doll houses and cutting off their Barbie's hair, it was amazing to have a girly pet and a toy that could bite back. Big brothers all over the world woke up to see their sisters Choo Choo Charlene crawling all over their beds. They screamed in horror, thinking a giant spider was crawling all over them. Then they'd see their little sisters laughing in the doorway, before coming in to collect their Choo Choo Charlenes and running off to play. While the boys played with army action figures outside, the girls would release these Choo Choo Charlenes to crawl all over the toy soldiers like huge pink walking tanks, while the boys whined and complained about the girls interrupting their games for once. Then the girls would take Choo Choo Charlenes back to their rooms and practice makeup on their pale, round faces before taking them for a bath. Because they didn't have fur, it was easy to keep their shiny pink train bodies clean. The parents didn't even need to get involved. The Choo Choo Charlenes were better pets than any dog or cat because of how smart they were. They learned to play dolls with the kids, and of course, they were a hit at sleepovers where the girls would take turns feeding them cupcakes and sweets. Within a year, Warren Charles III was one of the richest men in the world. He started a new company, the Choo Choo Charlene Pet Corporation. He soon used some of his hundreds of billions of dollars to finance a movie about one of the Choo Choo Charlenes joining a basketball team with LeBron James, and together, them teaching a plucky group of disadvantaged kids to play their hearts out. It became the highest-grossing movie of the year and won every Oscar. Warren Charles III and LeBron took the stage with a Choo Choo Charlene to accept a giant pile of little gold awards. All along the way, Warren was getting richer. Choo Choo Charles was laying more and more of those money-making pink eggs, and the girly and highly profitable Choo Choo Charlenes became more of a global hit. It seemed like everything might actually be okay from now on. The Islanders had been saved from the wrath of the formerly evil and all-devouring Choo Choo Charles. The Choo Choo Charlenes were bringing joy to the world, and in a personal victory for Warren Charles III, he was filthy rich. Nobody could have seen what was coming next. Choo Choo Charlene had already changed the world once, and now she was about to change it again in an event that was later known as the Great Transformation. It happened a year after the Choo Choo Charlene craze first started. Warren Charles III had made a terrible mistake. The period it took for a baby Choo Choo Charlene to turn into an adolescent Choo Choo Charlene was pretty much precisely a year. The Choo Choo Charlenes all began to twitch and shudder in the dark. Their legs began to extend out of their train-like bodies, stretching into longer, spikier protrusions. Their shells expanded, and their bodies expanded to fill them. Their eyes getting larger and hungrier, their teeth getting longer and sharper. While they kept their pink color, eyelashes, and pink claw fingernails, they were starting to take after their flesh-eating father. The human race was in for a big surprise, and this time, it wasn't a pleasant one. Millions of little girls all over the world woke up and screamed. Their Choo Choo Charlenes, which the day before had been the size of a small dog, were now each the size of a young horse. Some of them barely fit through the doors of their house. Nobody knew how to react to these new creatures. To people who weren't born and raised on Araniram Island and hadn't grown accustomed to its horrors, they weren't used to seeing huge giant spider train creatures crawling through the streets. There were no guidebooks for this kind of thing. But one thing was for sure. Increased size meant increased hunger. Normally, a few cupcakes were all you needed to keep your little Choo Choo Charlene satisfied for the day, but after the Great Transformation, it took several large cakes just to get them satisfied for the morning. And as their fangs grew, their sweet tooth seemed to shrink. Instead, they developed a hankering for a new kind of meal: meat. Steaks and sausages at first, but soon all the Choo Choo Charlenes were hungry for something a little more substantial. It started with other pets like cats and dogs disappearing first, and then people began going missing, lots and lots of people. As the Choo Choo Charlenes continued to grow, questions started to pile up for the world's richest man, Warren Charles III, about whether he'd sold the families of the world's dangerous monsters. The truth was, they didn't know the half of it. Choo Choo Charles himself, back in the center of the tunnel network under Araniram Island, having laid over 1 million Choo Choo Charlene eggs, was ready for all his patience to pay off. He was about to earn his title of the world's greatest ambush predator. He hadn't really been docile this whole time. He'd actually just been playing the long game. When he'd first been infected with the girly chemicals, it had actually increased his intelligence and given him some clarity. He realized that all these years rampaging and eating islanders, only to be stopped and then repeat the same dance all over again, he'd been playing a fool's game. If he wanted to return trained giga spiders to the dominant species on Earth, he needed to be ambitious. He needed to stop keeping his thoughts small, like Araniram Island itself, and instead consider a global view. And if his plan went well, not only would he spread his daughters all over the globe, he'd get that fool Warren Charles III to do all the hard work for him. The plan had gone off without a hitch. The daughters of Choo Choo Charles were all over the world, and now with his signal, they were going to help him take it over. Like many non-supernatural creepy crawlies, Choo Choo Charles shared a kind of hive mind with all the Choo Choo Charlenes across the world, all at once while nobody was prepared to take on a full-scale attack from their formerly adorable girly pets. Choo Choo Charles sent out the signal for his massive army of dangerous daughters to show the world what they were really capable of. And being real daddy's girls, they were all happy to oblige. All across the world, the Choo Choo Charlene started to get bigger and bigger. They weren't just the size of ponies now. They were reaching a similar huge, terrifying scale as their father. Their fangs sharpened, their claws became larger and more dangerous, and every single one of them immediately started attacking every single human being in sight. Police forces across the world dispatched as many members of personnel as available, all armed to the teeth with riot armor and the highest caliber of weaponry they could muster on short notice. The streets descended into open warfare between anyone able-bodied enough to defend themselves with weapons and the wave of pink death that was a seemingly endless army of Choo Choo Charlenes. Most who had small weaponry, from people trying to defend themselves with knives or small-caliber handguns, were quickly overwhelmed and eaten by their own quirky, girly trained spider pets. It didn't take long for martial law to unfold. Almost all global conflicts and wars were forgotten, as every country desperately requested for their militaries to return home and help them contain the horrific threat of the Choo Choo Charlene invasion. But it may already have been too late. The Choo Choo Charlenes were embedded into the fabric of every society that it was impossible to unleash artillery or try to bomb them out with planes without annihilating their own cities and suburbs. Tanks rolled down the streets, unleashing heavy shells and machine gun fire against the advancing Choo Choo Charlenes. But soon enough, each of these tanks was swarmed by several huge train spiders, using their teeth and claws to pull away the metal and devour the unfortunate soldiers within. It was almost like how the Choo Choo Charlenes had so easily wrecked the toy soldiers in military vehicles when they were little. It didn't seem like much more than a game to all these hungry, girly monsters overrunning the world. Though on an oddly lighter note, while the Choo Choo Charlenes were all more than happy to add human flesh to their diet, it didn't actually mean that they had entirely gone off the sweet treats that they'd been brought up on. Across the globe, as humans fled the built-up areas in a desperate attempt to escape their killer feral pets, the Choo Choo Charlenes happily ransacked bakeries and candy stores. They devour whole stockrooms full of sweetbread and cakes, eating whole boxes of donuts like they were a light snack. Some took these sweet dreams to even further heights. A few of the Choo Choo Charlenes located and infiltrated chocolate factories. They slurped pure liquid chocolate out of the vats, getting big and fat in the process. But they didn't care. To truly indulge themselves like this was the greatest day of their lives. Little by little, the world's army started to fall. They weren't organized enough to take on a threat that was seemingly emerging from every single angle. Crowds of gun-wielding soldiers became all-you-could-eat buffets as the pink train spiders descended upon them from every dark alleyway and ate them by the dozen. Hardened U.S. Marines and Navy SEALs screamed like frightened children as incredibly girly monsters swallowed them whole. The whole world was learning about the horrors that Aranirum Island had known for centuries, and on the whole they were hopelessly unprepared to respond to it. This is how the whole world goes down. Not with a bang, not even with a whimper, but with several million bright pink spider trains eating everything. Who could have seen this coming? While the world at large was in real trouble, things weren't any less stressful back on Aranirum Island. For one, Warren Charles III, the richest man on Earth back when money meant something, was having a terrible day. He was receiving angry phone calls from countless people complaining that the pets they'd bought from the Choo Choo Charlene Pet Corporation had now transformed into giant monsters and were causing the apocalypse. And worst of all, a lot of them were angrily asking for refunds after their friends and family members had been eaten alive by said pets. This was a seriously stressful time for the poor multi-billionaire who'd caused all these problems in the first place. His private security force of mercenaries surrounding the mansion with state-of-the-art weaponry was doing their best to battle back hordes of the Choo Choo Charlenes trying to gain entrance to the mansion. The number of the mercenaries were running out almost as fast as their ammunition supplies. So of course, Warren Charles III decided to do the only noble thing, considering his involvement in the whole mess. He took his private helicopter off the mansion's roof and flew it to some undisclosed location, leaving most of his hired mercenaries to be eaten alive by the nightmare he'd created. Like granddad, like grandson. In the tunnels beneath Aranirum Island, every single one of the Choo Choo Charles' luminous pink eggs that hadn't already been shipped off the island were hatching. The Choo Choo Charlenes born here immediately grew into huge flesh-eating monsters, climbing up the walls of their mining tunnels and searching for live prey. And behind them, the big daddy of them all, Choo Choo Charles himself, was sluggishly crawling out into the light. It had been so long since he tasted human beings, all that time inhaling chemicals and making eggs. He'd been patient, and now as trained spiders were on their way to becoming the dominant species on the planet, the patience was being rewarded. He didn't need to hide anymore. He could pick himself a new home, like, say, the empty Warren Charles III mansion, seeing as the greedy billionaire wasn't using it himself anymore. As the chaos unfolded across the globe, Choo Choo Charles, exhausted from siring millions upon millions of girls over the past year or so, retired into the empty shell of Warren Charles III's empty mega mansion. Much like almost everywhere else, the Choo Choo Charlenes had conquered the globe in his name. He sat himself down the main hall of the mansion and gave a sinister smile at the thought of all the destruction. His daughters had certainly done him proud.